All right, in this video, I wanted to go over how I was able to pass the bar while still holding a full-time job, being in the National Guard, and having family responsibilities. So, background on me, I went to law school later in life, and I was able to pass the bar on the first try while being a full-time project manager, an officer in the Army National Guard, a dad, a husband, and obviously going to school at night before I was taking the bar. Okay, first piece of advice that I would give is to start as early as possible to prepare for the bar. I knew that with my schedule, I had to give myself a long enough runway. So I sat for the bar, as you can see here, in February of 2024. So I really started my prep in December of 2022. And the reason for that is that my school required you to pass a mini bar. It was a MBE, I think 100 questions based on not all the 7 subjects, but I think 3 or 4 of them. So they required you to pass the mini bar in order for you to take the last 2 required classes before you graduated. So at that point, I used that as a springboard to start my prep. I had access through the school to review some of Themis's attack outlines, but what I also did was I signed up for the Adapt Bar videos, which I'll cover more in a second. So I was able to pass the mini bar in December. I think it was December or January. And then in January, I started my second to last semester of law school. And my school required for you to take a bar essay class. So this was to mirror the MEE portion of the bar. So they covered bar essays and the MPTs. And we touched on those subjects tested on the MEEs, and we also did 3 mini MBE type exams. Again, so I just used that as prep time. What I did discover throughout this process was that bar essay writing is a little bit different than your normal law school exam writing. So I'm glad that I took this. Well, I was required to take it, but I'm glad that I did take it because it just takes a little bit of effort to kind of break some old habits. And I also found this YouTube channel, Bar MD on YouTube, and she's actually a professor out in California. The California bar does it a little bit different than the UBE. But her videos on essay writing and how to do MPTs specifically were really helpful. So I recommend, and I'll post a link and talk about this a little bit later. The second piece here, actually the third piece now, is the MBE prep. So I said that in the spring of 2023, that was the second to last semester. I did take a summer class. It was a motions class over the summer in the remedies. But in the fall, that was my last semester, and there we were required to take an MBE style class, and we needed that to graduate as well. And there was a kind of series of steps in that class in order for us to kind of get us ready for the bar. But even to sit for the exam, we had to have a minimum score, or else we wouldn't even be able to sit for the class final. And again, this is a required class for us to graduate. What was really awesome, though, is in that class was I discovered in the summer, I discovered UWorld through another student advised me. I actually ended up getting that over the summer before that class started. So again, I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage with some of my peers going into that last semester. I also extended the Adapt Bar videos. I think I only did it for like 6 months initially, and then I ended up extending it for another 6 months to get it through December. In that class, the school also partnered with Themis, and they had some prep videos and some prep outlines, fillable outlines. That was really helpful. Like anything else, some of the videos were better than other subjects, but again, it was super helpful. There were a lot of resources there through that partnership, and they also had access to UWorld, which unbeknownst to me, so I ended up buying it over the summer when I was gonna get it anyways at the beginning of the semester. But whatever. Again, I had a month before that I was able to use that and kind of prepare. And then I was able to pass that class, and I started my bar prep the first, I think actually the second week of December. That's when it started. I was lucky enough to win a lottery, and I got a Kaplan bar prep for free, so I used that. We did have the option of using Themis. Again, when I signed up for this like lottery, I wasn't aware that we are going to get it free for Themis. In hindsight, I probably would not use Kaplan again. I think there might be other ones that might be a little bit better, but it was again good enough for me to pass. And then that took me all the way to the bar exam. So again, you can see having a long enough runway at least made a difference for me because of my schedule. Again, full-time work. Although, my employer was pretty flexible with me and taking some time off and whatnot. I was also able to work from home, so I think that helped. That reduced my commute time to kind of really maximize the amount of time I was using to study. So, but your runway might look your timeline might look a little bit different. But my advice is, take as much time as you need and really try to get down like the main concept. So when it comes down to your bar prep, your actual bar prep, you can focus more on the nuanced pieces of the law rather than trying to, get like the main themes or the big picture of stuff, either because you forgot it or because you never learned it the first time around. I did have a little bit of a commute from home to law school, so what I liked to do was listen to video lectures on the drive there. My school did a pretty decent job. They had a resource page where it was an exam prep, so a lot of videos and audios. So the ones that I really liked, I'll try to put the link to these in the description, or see if I can share the slide deck. But here are the ones that I really liked. Civil Procedure by Ardeen, Contracts by Professor Devlin, Evidence by Ardeen as well. I found this Wills and Trusts on YouTube that again, not the best, but it was good enough. And he had a slideshow. So again, I used that slide deck to make an outline, a little mini outline for myself. I did end up taking this class as an optional class, which again just made it easier when it came to bar prep. Business Entities, which is agency and corporations. This is just an audio by Professor Devlin, but I can't even tell you how many times I listened to this, and it was super helpful because when I came down to the bar prep, it was an area where I didn't have to spend too much time because I already knew most of the major concepts. And criminal law, I ended up liking criminal law a lot during school, but I listened to this series and prior to taking that class, and it was just an absolute game changer. I ended up getting an A. I think I probably got the top grade in that class, and it was really thanks to this lecture series. It just helps a ton. Going into the class before I even read a case, I already knew most of the concepts. So when it came to bar prep, this was one of the stronger areas that I was in. Okay, as I mentioned before, if you have the option, enroll in a bar essay class at school. I was lucky enough that my school required it, so I was kind of forced into it, but I'm glad that they had that option. I don't know of many schools that have a bar essay specific class, but if you do, I think about taking it. It'll be to your advantage. the one thing I mentioned, for your exams, typically you want to use the IRAC method, but for the bar, they recommend to use the track. I ended up using both IRAC and track on the bar exam. I think my essay score would have been a little bit better if I just used track, but um, again, the IRAC was just a little bit easier for me to use, and I scored high enough to pass. But again, if you can, I would probably recommend using the track method. You probably have stronger essays. And then the analysis piece, that's different. Being able to use the apply the facts to the law, right? So you need to be able to write element because of whatever ABC fact. And being able to write that analysis to pull the important facts from the fact pattern and apply the law to it, or the law to the facts, to make a really good analysis. And that's something that it was not really taught to us during our normal classes, during our core classes. Maybe a little bit in the writing class, but again, this class really drove that point, and it was super helpful to kind of break that mold and those old habits that at least for myself I use during my normal exams. Another piece of advice that I would recommend is to go onto the NCBE website. They actually post prior essays from years past, from bar exams past, and just take a look at that. I actually, one of the questions that I got, that my cohort got in on the bar, was a repeat question. So you never know. You might get lucky. Do all those practice ones, review, see how they answer, see how they apply the law, see how they apply the facts. I think this was really super helpful in me passing this bar essay class. Again, in my last semester, I was required to take this MBE style class. Super helpful. It was a very hard class. It was a lot of work, a lot of studying, but again, we used that as a springboard to start our bar prep. And without this class, it would have been much harder getting ready, just having those 2.5 months to study for the bar. And the breakdown in this one was that every week and a half we would be tested on one of the 7 MBE subjects. So I forget which one was first, but say civil procedure was first, then it was criminal law and crim pro, and then con law. So it was nice to give that focus of 1.5 weeks. We're only going to focus on this subject. We're going to test you on it to see how much you retained, and then you had to pass 4 of the 7 subjects in order for you to sit for the final exam. And then the final exam, you needed a minimum score. Again, they try to do some rough math where it would mimic the bar exam score, that you needed to get at least 135 average. And the other cool part was that for the final exam, again, they made it similar to the bar exam. You were going to be tested on 200 questions. It was going to be timed, and you couldn't have your phone or anything. You had to be there early, and you could go to the bathroom, whatever, but you needed to get permission, and your time wouldn't stop. So just going through that experience kind of gave you that extra rep before getting to the actual bar exam. One last thing here, and this wasn't covered that much during the exam, but it was mentioned in the bar prep course, that there's actually a specific way you need to answer, or you can answer, your MBE questions. So your bar prep course should give you that structure. I'd highly recommend following that, just because you're able to answer the question much quicker and more accurately. And you'll see that it is based on probabilities and percentages. So you need to put yourself in the best possible position. just a high level, you want to read. Generally, the advice is you read the call of the question, then you read the last sentence in that fact pattern, and then you look at your answers to narrow down. Like, you want to know what subject it is. If it's talking about civil procedure, then you want to know, okay, so then it's about jurisdiction. Okay, is it subject matter jurisdiction? Is it personal jurisdiction? Or is it venue? And you look at those three pieces of of information to try to really narrow down. So when you read through the fact pattern, through the paragraph or two paragraphs long of information, you're filtering out what is relevant and what is not relevant. So if you know it's about the call, the question is something to do with personal jurisdiction, you know that you really don't care about motions. You really don't care about anything to do with venue. You're looking to you're recalling the test for personal jurisdiction, right? If it's general or specific jurisdiction, is it minimum contacts? So you're trying to find that information, trying to find the keywords that are going to give you that answer for that very narrow, specific question that the bar examiners are testing you on. Okay. So there's like two theories in two schools of thought for law school that, for your optional, your elective classes, you want to take the classes that are most interesting to you, which I agree. However, the goal for me was to pass the bar on the first try and not waste any time and start practicing as soon as possible. So I actually went a different course, and I made sure that I left enough electives to take all the subjects that were going to be tested on the bar exam. So I actually did take a Wills and Trust class. Not my favorite class. Didn't like it at all. Don't like the subject matter. However, knowing some of the concepts, being familiar with the subject matter was super helpful when it came to bar prep. It's not like I had to relearn anything or everything. I just needed to kind of focus on some of the nuance details and nuance elements, to be able to know enough to pass the bar exam. Same thing with family law. Family law maybe a little bit more interesting, but again, not my favorite subject. And really happy that I took the class. Remedies, it's a very small. I think this was only a 2-credit class or something like that. There's not a lot of material in there, but again, it was helpful. I took it because I knew it was going to be tested on the bar, and just give me that extra layer of confidence. Secure transactions. This is probably my least favorite subject on all the subjects that were tested on the bar. I found this while I took it in law school. This was very hard. I did not like it. Didn't understand most of the concepts. However, when it came to the bar prep, I knew like the basic concepts, right? So the bar prep would really just focus your attention to a couple of sections or a couple of issues within this giant body of information. And that was super helpful because, again, I already had some baseline knowledge of the subject area, and they just focused my attention in maybe a handful of spaces, and it was much easier to get down those key concepts and to know enough to be able to pass the bar. And again, some of these subjects are only tested on the essay portion, so realistically, the odds of something coming up was actually slim. I don't think secure transactions came up on my bar. Wills and Trust did. I forget if family law or remedies was on the essay portion, but I know Wills and Trust did come up on the bar exam for me. All right, so I'd mentioned this before, adapter bar. I don't know how I came across this. I'm a big. I like to look on YouTube. I like to watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and I somehow came across this. This for me was game changer. So highly recommend it. Not getting paid to say this, but John Grossman, his video lectures are amazing. He was able to break down the law to simple, basic elements, and he's actually pretty funny. I like the way he delivers the information. Super helpful. So look him up on YouTube. He has like a mini lecture that he covers some of the topic areas, but it was worth the money. I think I ended up paying like maybe like $500-600 for like a year subscription for the video access, but it was great. And it also comes with outlines, and the outlines are just as good as the videos. Again, he only puts the key information. He breaks down all the elements, so it's more of like a checklist, and it's easier to memorize. So I can't say enough about it. I highly recommend you look into this and consider taking it, in addition to your normal bar prep stuff. Okay, Themis, like I mentioned, we had access to some of the Themis products. Their attack outlines were awesome. Used it a lot. So I highly recommend getting, if you don't have access to that, seeing if you can get your hands on some of their attack outlines. They're probably one of the better outlines that I've seen. Very comprehensive, a lot of information, but the information was digestible. I wasn't a big fan of the outlines that we're giving during bar prep. It had just way too much information, and it was hard to kind of break down some of the concepts. They had a lot of concepts there were actually like never heard of them, some of them. So I guess it was good in that sense to expose yourself to new information that maybe is not highly tested and that may come up on the bar. But I just found them to be overwhelming. So I really like the attack outlines that Themis puts out. Next, UWorld. I mentioned this before as well. If you're not going to use Themis for their bar prep, highly recommend to get UWorld. I think their questions, their MBE questions, are probably the best out there. Since they actually used most of the questions are old bar exam questions, and then they put out their own. But I think the level of difficulty that those questions are more realistic to the bar exam that you might see. The NCBE actually puts out their own MBE questions on their website, on their study portal. I did use that, but I wasn't a big fan. I think those questions were much easier, and they gave like a false sense of confidence. And compare that to the MBE questions in your bar prep program. Those you're going to see are much harder, and they get harder as you progress through the course. And I think those they kind of chip away at your confidence that you're not doing that well, and they intentionally make it harder, and I kind of get it, but I think they were too hard and not really realistic. I think the UWorld MBE questions are probably closer to what you're going to see at the bar. A little bit, some are harder than others, but again, really good resource, and you can actually make your own flashcards through there. But as you'll see, that wasn't the primary source that I used for flashcards. Again, worth the money. I forget how much I paid for it, but worth every penny. The next is this flashcard app. Anki, I downloaded on my phone. I discovered this through looking on YouTube to figure out what was the best study method. And this is what a lot of medical students use to study. So I said, well, if it's good enough for medical school, why not use it for law school? And I would actually make my own flashcards based on the lectures, based on outlines, based on all the material that I came across. I would make my own flashcards, and the app is super easy to use, very customizable, and I always kept on trying to refine it, dumb it down, sort of like how John Grossman did in his video lectures. And I try to break it down into simple elements and try to memorize those elements. So, again, really useful. This is free, didn't cost me anything. So, highly recommend it. This is just one video that I found. I'll try to post a link here in the description, but I think this kind of was a really helpful tip. Was it's not necessarily about the quantity, but the quality of the MBE questions that you do. So having a system where you review your wrong answers was super helpful, and I actually wish that I did more of that instead of focusing on doing lots of MBE questions. I mentioned this already too. Bar MD, look it up on YouTube. The professor there is super helpful. Keep in mind there are two types of MPTs. They're objective and persuasive, depending on your audience. And for example, you might be assigned to write a memo, and it's directed to the judge. So there you would need to write a persuasive MPT versus an objective memo, say if you're writing to a client or to a senior partner. So it depends on your assignment, and she'll give you more information on how to do this. So highly recommend it. She has a systematic way of approaching and a structure to your essay that makes it super simple. I actually wish I don't think I did as well on the essay portion. I kind of ran out of time, but again, it was good enough to pass. Okay, your bar prep program. So doesn't matter who you use; they're all do a good job, at least from what I heard. But they do say, and I recommend to do as much of the course or program as possible. Studies have shown that there's a correlation between the percentage that you complete the work and the passing rate. So the more you do it, the more reps you get in, the more information you're going to learn, the higher the chance you're going to have to pass the bar exam. Again, I used Kaplan. There were some features that I did like, some features that I wasn't a huge fan of. I think if I were to do it again, I would want to try Barbary. Barbary looks like they have the most up-to-date technology, and they've done a lot more research into the analytics to get you in a good spot. So if I were to do it again, I'd probably look into Barbary. Themis, I got a glimpse of the Themis bar prep. If I didn't do Barbary, I'd probably consider doing Themis again. Okay, so what was my actual schedule? So again, I started 15 months out, but 8 months out, I started to get really serious. And I went from studying about 32 hours a week to 53 hours a week, 3 months out as I got closer to the bar exam. So, that you can see that delta from 32 to 53 hours of active learning, not just, watching lectures, not just sitting in class and doodling while the professor was giving their lecture, of actual studying, reading the material, writing it down, doing flashcards, taking practice exams, and things like that. So there is a difference between passive and active. So, switching your focus to active is definitely beneficial. All right, so lessons learned, things that I would do again. Like I said, Adaptabar, UWorld, Anki flashcards, and giving myself enough time. Things that I would improve on, I'd probably try the Barbary bar prep, doing more timed MPTs. I ran out of the time during the bar. I ran out of time on the bar exam doing MPTs, so I kind of rushed it a little bit. And I wish I'd spend more time reviewing MBE wrong answers. Don't get caught up on trying to do more and more MBE practice questions. I think quality over quantity does make a difference. And this is the goal, right? You can see my score. Again, could the score have been a little bit better given the amount of hours and time that I had to study? Sure, but it doesn't matter. A passing score is a passing score. So, lesson here, if I can do it with my busy schedule, go into law school later in life, you can too. So, best of luck.